Devil's Arithmetic, Chapter 16. The first choosing had been the hardest, Hannah thought later. After that, it merely became a part of the routine. And if you didn't stand too near the Greeks, or work too slowly, or say the wrong word, or speak too loudly to annoy a guard, or threaten the baklava, or stumble badly, or fall ill, the chances were that this time you wouldn't be chosen. This time. Part of her revolted against the insanity of the rules. Part of her was grateful. In a world of chaos, any guidelines helped, and she knew that each day she remained alive, she remained alive. 1 + 1 + 1, the devil's arithmetic, Giddle called it. And so one day eroded into the next. Her memories became camp memories only. The day a guard gave her a piece of sausage and asked for nothing in return. The morning a new shipment of Zugangi arrived. The morning a new shipment didn't arrive. The afternoon Giddle organized a rope, and the children all played jumping games after dinner. And that same night, when red-headed Masha from Krakow hanged herself with the jump rope, having learned that her husband and 17-year-old son had gone up in the smokestack. It was on a Sunday afternoon, as Hannah cleaned out cauldrons with chiffre, that Hannah asked dreamily, "What is your favorite food? If you could have anything in the world." They were in the tipped-over pots on their hands and knees, scraping off bits of burnt potato that still clung stubbornly to the vast pot bottom. Chiffre backed out of the cauldron, wiping one dirty hand across her cheek. She thought a moment before answering. It was not a new question. They had been asking each other variations of the same thing for weeks. "An orange, I think," she said slowly. That was a change. Usually she said an egg. "An orange," Hannah echoed, pleased with the novelty. "I'd forgotten oranges." "Or an egg. Boiled or fried?" They were back to the regular conversation. "Or scrambled? Or an omelet?" "How about pizza?" Hannah said suddenly. "What is pizza?" Chiffre asked. I don't know," Hannah said miserably, fingers in her mouth, blurring the words. "I can't remember. I can only remember potato soup." "You can remember eggs," Chiffre said. "No, I can't. Not pizza, not eggs either. Only potato soup and hard brown bread. That's all I can remember." She popped a piece of the burnt potato scraping into her mouth. "Well, do not cry over this pizza. Tell me about it." "I can't," Hannah said. "I'm not crying over the thing, whatever it is. I'm crying because I can't remember what it is. I can't remember anything." "You can remember the shuttle," Chiffre said, "and Lublin." "That's the trouble," said Hannah. "I can't." Just then Rivka came out of the kitchen and shook her finger at Hannah. "No tears," she said. "If the baklava sees you crying, that three-fingered b—" Hannah stopped herself in time. It was a dangerous habit to fall into, calling the baklava names. One might be chosen for doing such a thing. "If she loses control of her Zugangi, she will be a two-fingered whatever you call her," said Rivka, smiling. "What do you mean?" Hannah and Chiffre asked together. "How do you think she lost those other fingers?" Hannah mused. "I thought maybe she'd been born that way." Holding up her own hand and wriggling the fingers, Rivka pointed to one. "She lost control and a whole group of Zugangi rioted. That was right before I got here. They were sent through Lilith's cave, and she lost one finger. Then she lost control, and 6 Zugangi hanged themselves one night, my Aunt Sarah among them. Aunt Sarah had been sick for a long time and could no longer disguise it. She knew she was to be sent to the hospital. Everyone really sick in the hospital goes up in the stack. So she said to my mother, 'I will do the choosing, not them. God will understand.'" Rivka smiled. "A second finger. I wish Aunt Sarah could have seen the baklava's face in the morning when they took the finger." "Maybe we could do something to help the baklava balance her hand. 3 is such an unlucky number," Chiffre said. Rivka shook her head. "Too dangerous," she said. "Let the grown-ups make their plans." "What plans?" asked Hannah. "Oh," Rivka said mysteriously, "there are always grown-up plans." What plans? Hannah and Schifre asked together. But before Rivka could answer, a shout from the gate ended the compound riveted between them. Commandant! But he was just through yesterday, Hannah said in a nervous whisper. He's not due for at least another few days. Ignoring her, Rivka had her hands already to her mouth, making the clucking sound to warn the children. Schifre, too, was signaling. It's not fair, Hannah complained, her voice rising into a whine. Schifre nudged her angrily, and Hannah began to cluck as the little one scrambled for the midden pile. The first two in were a brother and sister, 7 and 8 years old. They left green and blue shorts and shirts at the edge of the dump. Next came a 9-year-old girl carrying a baby. She shucked off her shoes as she ran and, holding the baby under one arm, tore off its shirt. When she set the naked baby down on the side of the pile in order to get out of her own dress, the child immediately began crawling toward the midden on its own. Like spawning fish, the children came from everywhere to dive into the pile. They waded or crept in one after another while the horrible clucking continued, and overhead the swallows, alerted to a feast of insects, dipped and soared. Hannah finally heard the commandant's car, then saw it as it barreled toward them down a long, bare avenue between barracks. It moved relentlessly toward the hospital, which squatted at the compound's end. The car had just passed the Zugangi barracks when the hospital door opened and a small, thin boy limped down the steps, his right knee bloody and his blue eyes ringed with dirt. He was wiping his hands on his shirt. When he looked up and saw the car bearing down on him, despite the desperate clucking from all around, he froze, staring. Reuben! Hannah cried out. Run! Run to the midden! But the boy didn't move, and she felt a sudden coldness strike through her, as if an ice dagger had been plunged into her belly. Goiten you! Rivka whispered. Schifre, who had been looking at the midden with its bright flags of clothing, heard Hannah shout and turned. She grabbed Hannah's hand, squeezing it until there was no feeling left. The car slowed and stopped. Commandant Brewer himself got out of the car. He walked toward Reuben, and the child could not look at him, staring instead at Hannah, his hand outstretched toward her. Big tears ran down his cheeks, but he cried without a sound. He knows, Hannah whispered. Hush, Rivka said. The commandant looked down at the boy. Have you hurt yourself, my child? He asked, his voice deadly soft. Hannah moved forward a step and Rivka jerked her back. Let me see, Brewer said. He took a white handkerchief out of his pocket and touched it to Reuben's bloody knee thoughtfully. And where is your mother? When Reuben didn't answer, Hannah stepped forward. Please, sir, his mother is dead. Rivka gasped. Hannah heard her and added hastily, She died years ago when he was born. The commandant stood up and stared at her, his eyes gray and unreadable. Are you his sister? She shook her head dumbly, afraid to say more. That is good for you. Brewer bent down and wrapped the handkerchief around the boy's knees, knotting it gently with firm, practiced hands. Then he picked Reuben up. A boy your age should be with his mother, he said, smiling. So I shall be sure you go to her. He handed Reuben to his driver, who was waiting by the car door. Then, without another word, Brewer went up to the stairs to the hospital and closed the door so quietly they could not tell when it was finally shut. That evening, the sky was red and black with the fire and smoke. The latest arrivals in the cattle cars had not been placed in barracks. The camp was full. The newcomers had been shipped directly to processing, a change in routine that frightened even the long-termers. Rumors swept through the camp. A shipment from Holland, some said. A shipment from Silesia. No one knew for sure. But Reuben did not come back. Not that evening. Not that night. Not ever, Hannah muttered to herself as she watched the smoke curling up, writing its long numbers against the stone-colored sky. And it's my fault. Why is it your fault? Rivka asked. I should have said he was my brother. Then you would not be here either. It would not have helped Reuben. He is dead, Hannah said the word aloud curiously, as if understanding it for the first time. Dead. Do not say that word. Monsters, Hannah said suddenly. Gittel is right. We are all monsters. We are victims, Rivka said. They are the monsters. We are all monsters, Hannah said, because we are letting it happen. She said it not as if she believed it, but as if she were repeating something she had heard. God is letting it happen, Rivka said, but there is a reason. We cannot see it yet. Like the binding of Isaac, my father always said that the universe is a great circle, and we only see a small piece of the arc. God is no monster, whatever you think now. There is a reason. Hannah scuffed the ground with her foot. We should fight, she said. We should go down fighting. Rivka smiled sadly. What would we fight with? With guns. We have no guns. With knives. Where are our knives? With something. Rivka put her arm around Hannah's shoulder. Come, there is more work to be done. Work is not fighting. You want to be a hero, like Joshua at Jericho, like Samson against the Philistines. She smiled again. I want to be a hero like... Hannah thought a minute, but she could think of no one. Who? I don't know. My mother said before she died that it is much harder to live this way and to die this way than to go out shooting. Much harder. Chaya, you are a hero. I am a hero. Rivka stared for a moment at the sky and the curling smoke. We are all heroes here. That night, Faye began to speak as if the words so long dammed up had risen to flood. She told a story she had heard from her father about the great Baal Shem Tov. It was said in the time when he was a boy named Israel, and his father warned him, know, my son, that the enemy will always be with you. He will be in the shadow of your dreams and in your living flesh, for he is the other part of yourself. There will be times when he will surround you with walls of darkness. But remember always that your soul is secure to you, for your soul is entire, and that he cannot enter your soul, for your soul is a part of God. Faye's voice rose and fell as she told how young Israel led a small band of children against a werewolf whose heart was Satan's. In the end, when Israel walked straight to the werewolf's body, he held his awful dark heart in his hand, shivering and jerking like a fish out of water. Faye said, her own hand moving the same way, that the awful heart was filled with immeasurable pain, a pain that began before time and would endure forever. Then she whispered the story as the night enfolded them. Then Israel took pity on the heart and gave it freedom. He placed it on the earth, and the earth opened and swallowed the black heart into itself. A sigh ran around the barrack, and Hannah's was the deepest of all. A werewolf, she thought. That's where we are now, in the belly of a werewolf. But where? Where is the dark, pain-filled heart? She was still sighing when she slipped into sleep.